Okay, welcome, Pahrump. I'm Dr. Michael Reiner. We're running the usual Monday night show of the Independent Doctors of Pahrump. And tonight I'm going to be talking a little bit about what I've been trying to make as a continuation series. And I know we've been broken up by different topics along the way, but continuing along with the dietary modification as well as nutritional modification that is so poorly and misunderstood in the medical community today. And I wouldn't say it's misunderstood. Maybe a better term would be it's just not communicated very well by physicians and practitioners to our patients. We get very busy. It's a lot easier to treat your numbers and maybe to sit down and have conversations with patients about the proper way to eat and what to eat. And I know I've talked a little bit about weight, I've talked a little bit about nutritional and caloric, and I want to kind of bring that into the cholesterol model because, believe it or not, I think there's a lot of myths out there about cholesterol and cholesterol-related diseases, and maybe talk a little bit about that history, about how they develop, how we've got maybe misinformed, and how we're still in the process of really understanding how cholesterol really forms heart disease and what are the important things that we might be doing to help modify that. And a lot of that is based on my experience as a practitioner in seeing different disease states and different patients and trying to educate them about how to properly eat and take care of themselves, along working with the other practitioners who are their cardiologists or their pulmonologists that are prescribing different medicines. Now, tonight is a live show, and we do have a call-in, so if you're a viewer out there, no question is too embarrassing or too, as I call, no stupid, because I know it's a bad term, but I've always been taught that the only dumb question is the one that you don't answer or don't ask, because then people, things get left so-called, you're just confused. You don't know what the answer is. I think they put that call-up line 727-8750, and you can call me about anything, any medical topic that you want to discuss. However, if you have any comments that are disrespecting or mean or something that doesn't pertain to the show, I would ask that you not make those comments tonight. I really would not want to spend time on those particular issues. I want to go back to a slide that we talked about earlier, and when we talked about weight and weight reduction, and if you could bring that up, I wanted to talk a little bit about what I call this diet, which is the basically low carbohydrate diet. And this was an end of a previous talk where we basically talked about eliminating root vegetables, which are very high in amylose. Amylose is a very compacted starch. It gets digested by the amylase in your saliva, so that by the time it hits your intestinal tract, it's almost pure sugar. These are carrots, potatoes, onions, radishes, beets. Anything that has a root that's a vegetable is very high in sugar. Even though it may not taste like sugar, by the time it hits your stomach, it is sugar. And then white and processed breads and wheats, again, are very high in sugar, and when we eat those, we are basically digested before they hit our stomach, and we're ingesting pure sugar at that point. And one of the fruits that are basically, if we eat a fruit that has a skin on it, we're in much better shape than if we eat a fruit that has that we peel, such as bananas or melons. They're very high in sugar. And then basically I want to talk about leaner meats, not so much from the cholesterol risk, and then we're going to go into that a little bit, but we're basically going to talk about the fact that fat does go to fat. So if you're eating fat, you will gain fat, and that's one of the things that it doesn't really affect your cholesterol. That's one of the myths we're going to talk about, but if you're gaining weight, it is affecting other portions of your body and causing other problems. And this is the big thing. If you look out in the world today and you see a lot of obese people, part of that has to do with the fact that food is more processed today than it ever has been. And that's where I think the root of all the evil is in our food, is that it's all processed, it's manufactured, and you really should take the time to watch a movie called Food Incorporated. It's about a 2-hour documentary on how the fast food nation has come into what we think is food that's good in the grocery store, but it is not. It is all processed, and that processed food is called genetically modified organisms, and that means that big food producers have genetically engineered our natural food to basically make it bigger, faster, and better. I wouldn't say better, but certainly bigger. And that basically is a process by where we think we're eating healthy, but we're really not. So let's go to this next slide, which is basically going to be talk a little bit about heart disease. And these are some interesting facts. I hope you can see them on your screen. But cardiovascular disease does affect 65 million Americans. Now, that's not really defined what that is. That could be high blood pressure. It could be if you've had a heart attack, if you've had some event. Now, I know when we talk about patients in medicine, one of the things that happens is we take a patient who has basically had a cardiovascular event, who is at risk of having a cardiovascular event. And risk factor assessment is based on basically a stratification of patients, meaning, do you have a family history? And I think that is very important. Or are you involved in risk behaviors such as smoking, drinking, and other things of that nature that raise your blood pressure? Are you obese? Do you have a proper diet? These are all risk factors for heart disease. But those do affect 65 million Americans. The other thing is that close to 1 million Americans have had or do have a heart attack each year, and that's a lot. The cost of that is in the hundreds of billions, and that means one person dies every 39 seconds of cardiovascular disease. 1 in 3 deaths that occur in the U.S. is caused by a cardiovascular death, and that's a little misleading, and I want to clarify that because there is a new electronic death recognition system or registry system, and a lot of times, I think that number is skewed because even I, as a physician who have to fill out a death certificate, they have this new system where they want you to be very specific on what you're writing as the cause of death. And it's a process in evolution. And a lot of doctors were just really quick to write acute myocardial infarction, atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease is a cause of death, because at the time of death, everybody's heart stops. So that's what they were using. So I'm not so sure that those numbers are exactly correct, but a lot of people do die of heart disease, but the recognition of that or the actual nomenclature will change in the next few years. And certainly as science advances and more more advances are made in the realm of cardiovascular disease, we will actually see those numbers change. But today, with the obesity that we have and the risk for heart disease, we see a lot of it. And I, as a physician, spend a lot of time every day talking to patients about their high blood pressure. And as we age, I would say 80% of the people that I see have had a heart attack or have had some cardiovascular event. And so it is very prevalent, and I think that number, the 65 million Americans, is a very accurate number. And again, the total cost of the heart disease in 2008 was $300 billion. And that's a true number. That is taken probably from all the healthcare reporting systems, and even though that seems like an old net number, and those numbers have been different, it takes that long for someone to compute that particular data and come up with an actual number. And going to the next slide, which is the myth, which is that eating cholesterol and saturated fat raises a blood level in your cholesterol. Now, when we come back from the break, I'm going to take a little bit of time to discuss that. And again, Pahrump, thank you very much for tuning in tonight. We'll be right back after this short break.